have to go that way. Very quiet all of a sudden. Keep talking. Keep talking. Chat. Okay. All right, sorry. I'm running 4 minutes late. Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We'd like to begin the meeting with a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional homelands of the Puyallup tribe. Though the Medicine Creek Treaty of 1854 removed Native peoples to clear way for colonial settlement, the Puyallup people have lived on and stewarded these lands since the beginning of time and continue to do so today.
Thank you. Okay, this is a time for public comment. Remember, we do this for 15 minutes and we limit comments to 3 minutes per person. And we do not comment back, although we are listening to what you say. I think we only have one esteemed member of the public this evening. Would you stand and state your name?
Amanda Long.
You're good to go.
I'm good to go. Okay. Cool. Well, I have 2 things on my agenda. One I thought of just before I came, and I thought I would suggest that maybe at the next few board meetings we have the mayor in here, and how interesting that would be.
The sheep.
Yep. Go. Yes.
Go. That'd be
Yeah.
good.
That'd be funny. So
Yes.
anyway,
That's fun.
good evening, and thank you for your service. You know, most of you know that I absolutely love working for this district, and I agree that we all are working really hard this year. So, our community acknowledges that the pandemic has hindered our students' social and emotional progress. The American education system has also acknowledged that preschool kids need smaller class sizes and more adult support. So I'm here as a kindergarten teacher to speak through my perspective that the kindergartners this year are presenting a lot like preschoolers in both academic and social ways. So, and we know that many of them did not attend regular preschool or like consistent preschool or preschool. And then a lot of them still have families in very stressful conditions. So I'm wondering, how is it that most of us didn't, or how is it that we did, that we knew that most of the students who didn't have preschool, but we are still expecting them to be in kindergarten at the rigor of a kindergartner instead of a preschool, and then only provide one teacher as their support. I'm noticing, as well as my other colleagues, that the needs of the kindergartners are so many and so often that it's hard for them to get down from high stress levels independently. And I feel like a lot of their needs are not being met throughout the day. So I feel also that these challenges are going to continue as, especially this class goes up through the grade levels. And I wanted to call for more support in kindergarten. I would love to have a teacher aide that is a consistent person that comes to kindergarten often and helps a teacher manage a class when a student is in crisis. We have asked parents to volunteer, and they are doing what they can. I have 3 really strong parent volunteers, and this week I asked our admin to come and stop by more. So I'm really hoping that that happens throughout the next few weeks, because the adult support that the kids are needing, it just has to happen more. So I'm worried that if the behaviors that the students continue to have, they will start to form habits, and then they will continue on up through the grade levels. We need person power in kindergarten. Thanks.
Thanks, Minda.
Mhm.
And as I said, we don't comment, but we hear you.
Thanks.
All right, superintendent report.
Okay, so there is quite a lot to report tonight, so I will just go through the information. Tonight, in my report, I'm providing the board an update with some work that that Toby and Matt and I and Zabet have been engaged in with the Park District. And so we met with the Park District at our annual meeting, or Commons meeting, late fall last year. And, you know, included in the topics of discussion were fees, and Park District, you know, mentioned to us, or acknowledged to us that it was an unusual arrangement to have a Park District which manages a school district's facilities, you know, fields and classrooms, et cetera. And so at that meeting, we kind of agreed with that experience, and we, both the park leadership and our leadership, agreed that it'd be interesting to explore different options. And that, you know, termination of the agreement, you know, was discussed by both of us, and agreed that if we were going to move forward with any kind of decision on the Park Commons agreement, that we would need more information, you know, before moving forward with any kind of decision, you know, about the Park Commons agreement. So, but during that conversation, two concerns were shared, and when I say shared, both vocalized, but also shared by both the park leadership and the board leadership at the time. And those concerns were mostly around the increase of fees for our community, our user groups, and also to make sure that the user experience was a similar user experience. And so if any agreement was terminated, we did not want to create two separate systems. You know, it's not the intent to try to create two different systems for our community. And so we left that meeting, you know, mostly in agreement about, you know, exploring opportunities, and then coming back in later in December. We did meet again in later December, and at that time, Matt and Kevin and myself had done some exploration with a company called Facilitron, which is an online management company. And when we met in that December meeting, both our Park District leadership and our leadership agreed that some of the aspects of Facilitron looked very promising to us in terms of management of the facilities. But still no decisions were made, mostly just information was shared with an agreement to come back in January, you know, to meet, and that would give us more time to explore what it would look like to work with Facilitron. Again, concerns were shared once again about, you know, user fees and also you know, a common user experience between the school district and Park District. And then as we moved into January, Toby and I met with Elaine, the director, on the 18th, and we shared a potential timeline of decision making. Again, more information of what we've learned from Facilitron, and that we were in the process of analyzing what would it cost, you know, what does it cost to actually run our facilities, because we know that information is going to be important, you know, especially when it comes to if there's any discussion around and decisions around user fees, you know, in terms of what does it cost for us to provide those, you know, maintenance and upkeep of fields, et cetera, and what should the fees be. We have not come even close to knowing that yet, but those decisions are quite a bit down the road. So this is really meant just to be an update for you. The next meeting is scheduled tomorrow with Park District leadership, and continuing that cycle of conversation with them. And we'll share more information with their leadership at that time, and probably share a potential timeline that's contingent upon some initial, you know, decisions by our board. One of the things to note for this board is that if there's any board action or termination of the Commons agreement, that has to be done 90 days in advance of the end of that contract. and the end of that contract is June 30th of this month. So that really puts this board, this year. So that would mean that this board would take action before March 30th. We have 3 board meetings in advance right now, February 10th, March 10th, and March 24th. Facilitron is going to be coming to our board meeting on February 10th to give a presentation, and at that time we'll probably first point of discussion around, it's basically a first read in terms of a decision to both terminate the Commons agreement, but also to move forward with Facilitron. And so, as you know, everything's a 2 board meeting process, which gives the public, ample opportunity for input. But at that point in time, we'll have discussion. And as I was speaking with Elaine today, this is what I called you earlier on. I made an invitation to their board and Elaine, if they would like to come to that February 10th meeting, if they would want to, be able to see the presentation from Facilitron, because their board has expressed, or their leadership has expressed interest in Facilitron. Again, no decisions being made. Interest, that's what exploration is about, is determining if there's interest. And so, but I've invited them to join us for that evening for that part of the presentation, and if the board would want, engage them in discussion as well. So, just kind of an advance notice of what's in front of us for February, and then. We do see that if a decision is made to terminate the agreement and to move forward with Facilitron, then the months subsequent to March would be used for analysis of our costs, what it would cost to basically make our facilities an enterprise, a business, and not a business but a program. And then work with Facilitron in the community, community forums around what the impacts of any kind of fee increase would look like, and what the plan would be for any kind of fee increase, over a period of 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. Those are all potential discussion topics and decisions that the board will have in front of them in the upcoming months. So this is kind of my just announcement, that we're a couple meetings into the process, and we have another meeting tomorrow where we'll learn more, have more of a discussion. And then the board, as I understand, the Parks District Board had it as a topic last night on their, during their board meeting, and so we're trying to move in alignment and in agreement with, with their board and our board leadership, because it's, again, our goals are to make it a seamless process, bring efficiency and effectiveness to the management of our facilities, and offer our public a similar experience to what they've been having, or probably an enhanced experience. So questions about what I've shared?
Maybe I could add some additional comment.
Sure.
I want to recognize that actually, as I was reading through the Commons Agreement, that this is a document and an agreement that a lot of people in the community worked really hard to create with a common goal in mind. And there's a lot of personal investment that people had in it and the success of it, because it's a way for us to collectively nurture the public resources to the benefit of the community. And our objective is to find a way that we're recovering costs to make those resources available in a way that's consistent and in collaboration with the Park District and ultimately for the end users. And so we acknowledge that there's a ton of work here, and we're not trying to, get rid of something that we're rather exploring ideas to be more efficient and effective in doing that end goal. Also, that bond support for the district is also driven by public access to the resources and the trust in us to make those available in a way that's good for the entire community. And we've done a good job at that with the Park District, and I'm really pleased that we're working in collaboration with them in this process. So more to explore, and I thank you characterize the intent and what we're looking at now.
I probably appreciate that.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
Thanks for your work on this, and thank you, Toby, for your work on it too.
Next, I'd like to introduce our outstanding assistant principal from Vashon High School. I feel like I should, be wearing a cape, maybe. But John Erickson has come this evening. Just let you know, Danny had some other commitments this evening, and they will have probably for the next few months or so on Thursday nights. Danny Rock is the principal. So, and good question. And so, thanks, John, for coming. And he has some really good news to share with you. And because you don't have the connectivity.
Yeah, the
Sorry, I just realized that. So if you look into your board docs, sorry,
We
board.
could do a drum roll.
Right, you should be able to find the accreditation, yes, the accreditation review. All right, take it away, John. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks so much for having me. Good evening, everybody. Vashon Island.
Music comment, you have to stand.
Okay. Okay.
Coming over to me for
Amanda had to do it. You have to
Further?
do it.
Yes, there you go.
That's good.
Yes,
Can I stand right here?
Yeah, yeah.
Put my back to
There you go.
that's actually the
On
best.
the stage.
Great, thanks. First time, first pancake here this
Yeah,
evening, so thanks for being with
long-time
me.
listener, first-time caller.
Yep, nailed it. So I'll start over again with a good evening and to all of you, and thank you for inviting me here to share a little bit about our 3-year accreditation review. The 3-year accreditation review was a process that, just like the name sounds and suggests, it's a 3-year checkpoint after our initial accreditation, which occurred most recently in 2018. So this is an opportunity for the Association of Educational Service Districts to continue to engage in dialogue and collaboration, all in service of providing us, and that's us with a capital US, but also Danny and myself and the rest of the leadership team with feedback, constructive and otherwise, as we are working to shepherd our staff and our students during this particularly exciting time to be doing so. It was also just personally, professionally, a great opportunity for me to kind of do a little bit of rewind and catch up as someone who's new to the Vashon Island School District, but not new to education, to just continue to immerse myself in some of the background and the history, and to be able to be in touch with some of the shoulders of great work that I am lucky and grateful to be standing upon. So, like so many conversations these days that are pertinent to our school and our students, much of it revolves around the pandemic and its continued impacts, and our work to be responsive to those impacts in a way that's wholehearted and student-centered, and also to really work to shine a light on the incredible work that our teachers specifically, but also our whole community of families and students have and continue to do to support students, especially as it relates to some of the pieces that I think we typically take for granted around student success. So increased supports around access to and flexibility around students being able to access their guidance counselor, and to continue to articulate with our neighbor care clinic and the mental health services that it provides, and our work to use systems of multi-tiered systems of support to respond to and anticipate student need. Also, that pertains to academics. And teachers have really been just incredibly flexible and responsive, especially at the secondary level, thinking about the way that grading processes are unfolding, and the increased, especially since early December and into January, with an increased wave with the Omicron variant. So the panel of 7 educators worked to give us commendations and recommendations around some of the work that we've been drawing a firm line in the sand around 3 years ago. And really for me, what stood out the most were the many connections and the way that just for item after item, I saw really strong parallels between the strategic plan work that at the time of the 3-year review, which was in early December, really lined up and paralleled very nicely. In particular, when we're thinking about our shared beliefs, in terms of the accommodations and the recommendations that we received from the board, our shared belief about collective responsibility for every student's success without exception, and then the fourth one, our belief that students must have a voice and see themselves in their schooling. These two beliefs really stood out in the way that the accommodations and the recommendations came through. So I'd like to share them with you briefly and take any questions if there are any. One of the commendations had to do with the work that's been done to cultivate just a culture and a school climate where teachers feel empowered and called, and where students feel empowered and called to take ownership and have real, actual voice as it pertains to our work around resource allocation, but also perhaps more importantly, around creating an equitable and a just school system. In terms of next steps and recommendations, it was to the primary two buckets. One was to begin to take on and deepen and strengthen and continue to develop new learning, especially for teachers and administrators and counselors and really our whole community around creating a universal design for learning and to employ that approach as a way to and a lens to design course content and curriculum in an intentional way that partners with students and with their families to identify barriers that students may have to engagement and to student success, and then to work to dismantle and disintegrate those boundaries and barriers. So the upshot is that we received congratulations for our dedication to our students and our schools, and had some next steps along the way. And the big picture was lots of alignment, at least from my view, around our strategic plan as it's unfolding.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, it's great.
Questions or impressions?
I love that they said that we should strengthen our universal design stuff, which I think is great because we're already doing that. Like, I know that Catherine's already hard at work on that, so it's nice to have that reinforcement from this team. So well done, especially during what we're going through. To your point. So thank you.
What does universal design mean? Sounds very.
Well, I can tell you my definition of it, and then John,
That's probably going to be a great
why
one.
don't you give a real
Yeah.
one? So mine is, how I think of it is how to make education accessible to every child. And I think that Catherine uses a great analogy, which I use often, which is the wheelchair ramps on sidewalks were primarily used for people in wheelchairs, for the ADA, and now, parents with strollers use them, and skateboarders use them, and bikers use them, and, shuffly people use them, and, everybody uses them, but they were not meant for everybody. They were meant for people in wheelchairs. And so this is a way of looking at education and saying, what if we, have a text to speech that's available for anybody. You don't have to have a 504 for it. And then maybe you want to just sit and listen to a book, even though you don't have that accommodation. Maybe that's the way you learn, and maybe that's a better thing. But that's my
version of it.
Yeah, I love that analogy. That helps me. I feel like that helps me understand it better too.
It all goes to Catherine. She's about her. But so,
That's my analogy.
yeah.
Who was Catherine?
Catherine Coleman is the head of Student Services.
Yeah, Director of Student Services.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's awesome. She's awesome. So, yeah, that's what you do, Alice. So, right on.
I'm honestly just curious what the review process is for this. Like, how do they receive information about our school and make a conclusion about it?
They schedule time to meet with Mr. Rock and Mr. Erickson, and they ask us a series of questions. We get a little bit of homework prior to, where there's all of the areas that the accreditation focuses on. I think there's like 16 different areas, and then we have a little bit of homework where we need to be inserting like a progress update that as much as possible is backed with some data points. And then we essentially have like a Zoom conversation around that. And it took 3 hours on the morning of December 8th to just enter into that dialogue and to have that conversation and to kind of simultaneously, really like a true dialogue. So we're listening to understand, and we're open to feedback that they have, and that dialogue was really heartening. Again, I'm going to start to sound like a broken record, but just the ways that it's lining up with the strategic plan that we've been collaboratively developing here as a community over the last 6-8 months. Those connections and those parallels and those ahas really made me feel like, oh, the work that's been happening and the strategic plan work that's been happening and the school work and those pieces are aligned and pointed mostly in the same direction.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good question.
Thanks, John.
All right. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Of course, you're always welcome to stay the entire evening, but you're also welcome to
Run out the door.
go to your family and have dinner as well. Thank you, John.
We're going to go do the bedtime routine. Good evening.
Yeah. Okay, now the favorite part of every board meeting, my COVID-19 response. So we'll continue with the January update, and I'm just going to, in a very similar way, update the board like I did last time. The good news is that the King County transmission rate peaked back on January 10th at 1,962 per 100,000, and we are. Jody and I did see a drop 2 days ago to 967, but we crept back over the 1,000 mark. So as of the time of writing my report or updating my report this afternoon, it was 1,023. So the good news is that it's decreasing. We see hospitalization rates due to COVID decreasing, and we see hospital occupancy of beds proportional to COVID also decreasing as well. Look, Jody brought up the slide.
She's so good.
I know. But I think at least, for me, and again, I'll take an ounce or two of optimism, as I sent to the staff earlier. When I see a line going that way, that's the way I like it to go. Transmission, we had a total of 33 confirmed positive cases last week, and the week prior was similar, but from my last board report, which was that first week in January, or second week in January, we were at 66. So what we see kind of in King County, we see that reflected in our own district as well. And then to date, meaning as of Thursday at 3 o'clock, we had reported this week, you have to take into account minus Monday because we didn't have students here, but we're still counting cases if those were reported. We're at 8 cases of known positive cases right now. And I did check my principal's own kind of dashboards or spreadsheets that they're keeping track of this week. So that would mean a decrease of around 66%, 76%. And so but what I'm saying is that we continue to monitor transmission and monitor the evidence. I will say that moving next in terms of contact tracing, Did I put that? Yes, so contact tracing last week, we were around 139 in contact tracing last night. So that's down from about 330, 350. So our contact tracing is also going down because of the case counts are going down. That would be fairly obvious. Testing availability, the last time I was reporting to the board, we experienced a 2-day shortage where we didn't have any tests in the district. We received kind of some roller coaster news around DOH has got it, everything's fine, and then literally within 24 hours, not everything's fine, DOH doesn't got it, and our local PSESD is going to be now managing test distribution, at least in the short term. I was able to go to Renton and pick up initially 500 or so tests, and I made another visit and picked up another shipment of tests, but as of now, we're testing between 40 and 85 students and staff a day, and we don't have an idea of when our next shipment is. So it hasn't been coordinated yet. So there's some uncertainty in terms of testing availability.
So the number of students and staff we test each day is independent of the sports testing, right?
Correct.
There's ongoing routines testing for student athletes.
Right. So that does bring me to some updates. Thanks, Toby. Good lead in. We didn't plan this. In terms of athletics, there's new guidance regarding athletics, and so rather than testing what they considered high-risk indoor sports 3 times a week, and then that would usually include the day of competition, now they are no longer testing, WIA has now said you're no longer testing 3 days a week, you're just testing athletes on the day of competition. So that will significantly impact Andy, who's our athletic director, when his kind of rhythm and cadence of testing, how many tests he will go through. So that's we see that as a positive change, and kind of again more signals that we are moving into what I continue to hear that hasn't been officially kind of stated by Department of Health or by our public health Seattle King County health officials, moving into that what we would consider an endemic phase versus a pandemic phase. Again, that's my analysis. That's not anything official from public health, but these continue to be what I consider signals. And then in terms of contact tracing, we received guidance about 2 weeks ago from Public Health, Seattle King County, and Department of Health that that districts should be moving into what they call priority contact tracing. And what that translates to is that we should be prioritizing contact tracing to transportation, extracurricular activities, athletics, and indoor areas when masking is inconsistent. And so that would probably mean lunch. The corollary of that is that we would not be prioritizing contact tracing to indoor settings where masking is consistent. And if you draw between 2 dots, that means classrooms. And so that guidance came out 2 weeks ago. Our admin team met, and we met with labor leaders at that time as well, and made some decisions at that point in time, mostly because we had the tests available, and we had some high, we saw kind of our trends were going this way, that we were going to continue with indoor classrooms and contact trace those. We had conversation with Mary Beckler from Public Health Seattle King County yesterday, and then received new guidance today regarding prioritizing testing, and again signaling to us and telling us with the guidance that we should be using priority contact tracing, and then kind of putting that lens onto our testing as well, because anytime you contact trace, it comes with testing. So those two made sense to us. We met as an admin team and our testing coordinators yesterday, and made a decision that we were going to move forward with priority contact tracing, not next week, but following next week. So on February 7th is when we're going to move to priority contact tracing. So it still means that we're going to contact trace indoor settings when masking is inconsistent. We're going to contact trace indoors if there's an outbreak. We're going to contact trace. And it was brought up by a staff member today here at Chautauqua. She probably wouldn't mind me saying her name, but I won't. What about siblings in a household? That is a place where we see, consistently high transmission rates, and that made sense to us. And I replied back, I kind of consider that, an outbreak scenario, and so we would contact trace siblings. That makes absolute sense. But again, what we're seeing here in school with our contact tracing is that we're with limited test supplies and you're contact tracing hundreds and hundreds of students each week. It's just not sustainable, and we're not seeing transmission rates that really support that kind of extending the expenditure of resources. So that's going to be new information. I sent it out today to staff. I'm sharing it tonight with the board, and I'll share those decisions out in a more public community email tomorrow, along with some other information. Some good news, and then please stop me when you have some questions. Some good news is that today we did not a final booster clinic, but what could be considered a follow-up to the booster clinic we had 2 weeks ago. Vashon Be Prepared and Tyler from the pharmacy. We tested 89 students today, grades 6 through 12. And so
Boosted or tested?
Boosted. Boosted. There may be a few in there who are getting, kind of either one of their first or second doses, but most were boosted. And so I was there today to say hi to those folks, and it was nice seeing, just again a well-run, I mean, the operation is it's a well-oiled machine. They know what they're doing. Lots of kids in rows with their sleeves pulled up. Jody pulled up the data dashboard, so I'd encourage anybody who's interested. That data dashboard then gets updated every Wednesday or Thursday for the week prior. That allows us to reconcile our data. I will note that our ECAP classroom closed last week due to an exposure event. We brought all the kids back on Tuesday. And not every kid was a close contact in that setting, so we did make an offer to about 4 students to come in, and they did to varying degrees, but it was somewhat helpful that it was a short week and that we were actually able to tag on a Monday as well, so they were all able to come back. And they all tested, etc. And then last but not least, I'd just like to put a plug in again for wearing KN5 or KF94 masks. And that seems to be something that we do have a supply of and that we continue to give teachers and all staff members. So if they would like one. And that's my kind of COVID top 10 hits right now. Again, everybody's favorite part of the board meeting. But if anybody would have any questions or some clarifications or...
Thank you for that update. I would only ask, to the extent that there is anything to share, you could take a moment to speak to what's the situation with COVID in terms of its impacts on student kind of mental health, student life, academic experience. If there's any kind of resources, support, or just learning that's happening so that the school kind of district is in a stronger position to try to address what kind of the inevitable equity issues and other kind of disparities and exacerbation of kind of concerns around consistency in academic performance and social life and all of that are locked into the COVID pandemic experience. But a lot of it starts with just understanding that data and knowing where people are with their physical health.
Right. No, those are great questions, and certainly I'll try to respond to. I mean, it's a big question. But I can point to a couple of things. I know, what is fortunate, so I was sharing with Toby and earlier today about the need outpacing resources. And I think that's what Amanda shared with us earlier today too, is the need is outpacing resources. We know that. We saw that in data that we took last year from student surveys, and that was similar to our Healthy Youth survey that they take annually. And so we saw that, social emotional degradation and academic, losses and impacts on kids. Notwithstanding all that, we are better prepared than most systems in terms of the type of tier 1 and tier 2 supports and teams that are, like our ability to come together and try to work on solutions is, we're a little more nimble and flexible than a larger system. So to the ability that we can respond to them, we are. To the ability that we can try to triage, needs and put resources to them, we're doing our best. But we're just not able to keep up with that need. Toby shared with me today, he was asked, and I know I'm off on a little bit of a tangent, but he shared a story because someone asked him what's it like being a board member, right, in our district. And you want to share what?
I said it's kind of hard to be operating in a public health institution, a food commissary, a mental health institution, and an educational district, which is kind of what expectations get piled on. And I know that the educational staff feels it, students feel it, parents certainly feel it. So it's there's a strain.
Like for example, we know, and we know that if you're out of school for 5 days, whether you're a kindergartner or a middle schooler or a high schooler, that's going to have some significant impacts on you. Some families are better resourced than others, and I'm really thankful for the counselors and the time that they are, spending in terms of identifying student need and addressing it. And Yadea Sagoon, who's been working, with parents through all kinds of different experiences with COVID-19. VYFS, has been providing, up to this point in time, they've provided over 690 hours of counseling services to our families and students. Neighbor Care also partners as well. So I don't have exact data. We are about to do that survey again, and we'll get the results back in April. I've asked the counseling team to come to the board in February to report, and so they can probably be a little bit more boots on the ground, responsive, and share information about that. Is that helpful, or?
Yeah.
That's. But it's a great conversation.
I just appreciate that. Adding a little bit more
Absolutely.
context to all the other sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. I do feel that, I will share that I'm not 100% accurate that we are at a turning point. I want to believe that we are. And so if you know me, I'm like, Pater Eternus, that I'm an optimist at heart, and I do feel like we're turning a little bit of a corner. Thank you very much. So I sent the board some information earlier from the buildings around our Black Lives Matter in Schools Week of Action, and so I won't go into too much detail in terms of what each building is engaged in, and the district will provide a kind of like a higher level experience for our community to engage in. But last year, our board took action on resolution 788, I believe, and that resolution was in support of Black Lives Matter in Schools Week of Action. And we were a little behind last year in terms of time-wise, but we made a commitment this year to our, to this week of action and to basically a month of action as well. And so our equity teams began work on this in earnest in part of December, but most in January, and our high school racial equity PAC team worked with Mr. Warmanhoven to provide experiences and activities for high school students and staff. And so we'll continue with the work. And just to note too, Patrice Coulors is going to be visiting us in April, co-founder of the Black Lives Matter movement, and we're partnering with Vashon Center for the Arts to, she's doing a residency, I think a 3-week residency with them, and we'll be able to, she'll come and do assemblies with us and focus groups and working with students at all grade levels. And so that's going to be, I think, an amazing experience for our district and our community as a whole. And I want to give a recognition to Vashon Schools Foundation, whose some of their donations and contributions to the district is supporting Patrice coming. And so, because we were able to provide $4,000 to Vashon Center for the Arts to bring her on board. Yeah, so kind of an extension from this, but I thought I would mention that as well. And then just a reminder to everybody, levy's February 8th. Make sure you get out and vote, especially you two. And ballots were mailed on the 19th, so hopefully everyone received their ballots, and you're encouraged to vote early, but not often. And just a reminder, our budget, the levy is about 15% of our budget, and it's not a new levy. And there's some conversation, or I was reminded to remind our community that not only is it not a new levy or a new tax, but it does not impact any of our neighboring districts, the Park District or the Cemetery District or the Fire District. We are kind of exempt from those other districts. And so we don't impact their levy cap. And
that is a very important thing to point out.
Right. It's an important thing to point out. And so, the levy rate is $1.50, but just to remind folks, because we collect, we don't collect the $1.50. It's estimated that we'll collect in the year 2023 $1.10, and then that's estimated, and then in 2026 that should go down to 91 cents. And so we collect $2,500 per student rather than $1.50 for per $1,000 of assessed value. So, and if our public would wants more information about our levy, please go to our website, where you'll see our levy button on the left-hand side with more information and a frequently asked questions section. Upcoming events, just to remind folks that we have a short session of the legislature that's currently in session, and Allison is enjoying that. And but we will be this upcoming Sunday. Huh? Yeah, Mariel. Oh, you're involved as well, huh?
Lots of fun.
Okay, so yes, you'll have to share it with us later. Right, everybody is. So we will have our legislative conference on the 31st, which is going to be this Sunday.
Right.
We're excited.
We
are excited. And unfortunately it's remote, but I'm sure it will be fulfilling and we'll learn a lot. And then on Monday, it's Monday.
Isn't it Monday the 31st?
Monday is 31st. We're on the 30th.
The
Thanks.
30th.
Yeah, it's the 31st that the four of us, as I know it right now, will be meeting with our legislators and our state senator. We're going to be meeting all at once, which is, it feels to me unusual.
So we're meeting with all three of them.
Yeah.
In one meeting.
In one
If it
meeting.
happens.
They're doing that a lot more in the virtual era, pulling all the members.
Yeah, or it might be two of them with one of their assistants.
Or
So-
maybe three assistants.
Or maybe three assistants. But Gwen, Ava, and Zabet and I will meet tomorrow and prepare for that conference with our representatives.
Looking forward to that.
And then, you know, kind of, again, issues on the table right now are funding stability, prototypical funding model, enrollment, and transportation stability as well. And for us, we're going to push hard on the prototypical funding model and try to, you know, take advantage of the crack in the door, tons of money, you know, pouring into Olympia. And I said it, so it must be true. And so,
$10 billion surplus.
exactly, $10 billion surplus. And we want to fully fund nurses. We want to fully fund counselors, school psychologists, school
Is that too
social
much to ask?
workers.
Is that too much to ask for?
Yes, so that's what we want to fully fund those positions for our district. All right. Upcoming events, February 10th board meeting. You know, we'll be, you know, developing that in the weeks coming. February 17th, exciting board retreat with John Welsh from the PSESD from 5:30 to 7. And then March 10th, board meeting at 7 o'clock as well. So, and I will be out of district for that midwinter break, just let you know. And as always, I usually make arrangements with Matt to cover kind of the operational side of the house, unless you're going. I haven't checked with you yet. And then Dr. Spencer, of course, if she's not gone either. But typically without students and staff here, you know, knock on wood, I'm still available by phone, etc. I will say this out loud. I'm taking my oldest, which I never thought I would say this, like to go look at some potential options for him after school, and then visit my parents in Oregon. So, but I'll be away for that week of. And usually I don't give updates of the board what I'm doing.
But this is a big one.
This is a big one, but also when I'm gone for longer than a week, I like to share with you that, you know, that I'm going to be gone.
We'll call you a lot.
Right, exactly. Now, other questions from the board? Otherwise, we'll turn it over.
That was, any questions? That was epic, the reporting. That was a lot. Thank you.
Okay.
And it was all good. It was all good. Don't listen to.
I know, I was going to say, this is getting good over here.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, are you guys ready?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. What has happened? We finished first semester of school. We made it through. Kind of. Still making it through. And definitely there were some challenges that came with that. I think going into this new semester is good. There's definitely room for improvement. I think standards-based grading is still getting figured out, both teachers and students. Lunch has switched around a little bit. We still have 2 lunch periods for COVID. It's better. And
Wait, but is it different? It's the same system but like different groups, or is it?
yes.
Okay,
So now all the seniors are together
I was
for
going to say,
one
you
lunch,
have 2 lunches.
Ah.
which is really nice. And then it's just kind of split in half into 2
Right,
groups.
okay.
That's good. And yeah, I mean, I would say that the standards-based grading issue has been really brought to light with the end of the semester, with students stressing over grades and stuff. So there's been a lot of focus on that probably. Semester coming to an end is always kind of like a stressful period because you're like, how do I fix my grades? But also then when you're done, it's like, everything is reset. So that's very nice. Yeah, there's the general stress that comes with a lot of COVID exposure right now, but I think a big thank you to the school is in order. There's a ton of work going into testing and supporting students who are at home. So, yeah, I don't know. Not a whole lot to say apart from the COVID and semester focus, but that's kind of what's been going on. Yay.
I would like to plug just quickly that there is some athletic events tomorrow night in our gym. The girls' basketball starts at 5 and the boys' basketball starts at 7. So I'll see you there.
Have you been able to be meeting? I mean, I sort of feel like, students are in, at home, they're in, just with so many absences. Have you been able to be meeting with the superintendent advisory group?
Yes, we did. We only meet once a month.
Oh, just once a month? Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, so we heard that, that's what was gonna be my question, but.
Yeah,
So
it was
we
kind of
meet-
just like,
We went one.
What is time?
I know.
Yeah.
So was that this year or was it last year?
Right, exactly.
Okay, all right. Well, good. Do you have a?
What are students looking forward to?
looking forward to.
Midwinter break, like,
Yeah, pretty much. I think with spring comes like nicer weather, which is always nice, and spring sports are going to be coming soon. Winter sports are still happening. Kids like to go support the teams. And, I don't know, yeah.
I'm probably looking forward to the possibility of COVID settling down a little. I mean, no one ever knows, but maybe the possibility of more student events and stuff like that that also come with better weather. Yeah, I think there was, that combined stress and also looking forward to the end of the semester, which has been a good reset. Otherwise, yeah, the future is unclear often.
It's true. Ava, superintendents were in a meeting this Wednesday, and we were talking about specifically how do we get back to our student events and some of the things that really bring students together and help, build that community of learners and friends. And because, buildings right now, we're looking at enrollment, districts are looking at enrollment, and we feel that if we're not providing some of these experiences for kids, that they may become less and less, more and more detached from the district and more apt to find other avenues to meet those particular needs. So how do we kind of safely get back to assemblies or field trips or dances, those kind of little benchmarks that mark our kids' experiences throughout the year. So anyway, just letting you know, it's on our mind as well.
I think that's really important because right now the students' minds are kind of weighed down with grades and COVID and how do I get everything done. And having those little things that make high school feel youthful and fun again are definitely important. And that, I'm excited to get back to that.
Yeah. Thanks, Ava. Thanks, Ben.
Okay, I'm gonna call on you randomly, so just be prepared. Callie?
So random.
It's almost going a
Next
little long.
person.
Just watch out what's gonna happen next.
My only remark is just to acknowledge that this time of year is super dark and dreary and can feel really heavy and hopeless. So I'm just here to say that don't forget that the spring is coming and that there are people around to support you. So just PSA to everyone who might be feeling alone, you're not alone, and we're here. So keep hope.
Toby?
Told you. Just checking my resources here. Not school related, but kind of interesting. I recognize Amy Schneider, the contestant on Jeopardy, just because you're calling
Right,
people
right.
randomly. As a really interesting leader who, broke some barriers for our world, which is really cool. And also Justice Breyer, two amazing leaders who are now retiring.
Yeah,
That's all I'd say.
very nice.
I have it.
Allison?
I am happy to report I had a really productive conversation with Senator Joe Wynn last week about needs for Vashon and school funding. It was a coincidence of perfect alignment and timing. We spent about half hour talking about the needs of the district, and so they're definitely on his radar. Talked a lot about write this one down for your meeting, 1664, which is the prototypical to add add the support staff to the increases to the prototypical model for school funding. So yeah, it was really positive. He was really engaged and remembered you and many from the board and the district. So it was a really positive conversation, and happy to be able to do that.
Thank you.
A collision of worlds.
Seriously.
Fortuitous.
Nice. She's warming them up for us. Muriel?
Building on a bit of what Kelly said, just that I'm happy to be here, happy to be among such esteemed and caring folks involved in school work and kind of the interests of the youth. I sometimes myself feel a little bit disconnected from the community broadly, not just kind of from affairs here. And I want us to just kind of keep in mind how we reach out and also how we can bring in. So if you see me out and about, please say hi. Talking to the camera here too. Yeah, even if I look super awkward because I'm pretending like I can be a runner or something. I really, one of the things that's very special to me about this community is that we can feel connected just by virtue of being kind of stuck on this island together. I love to see folks and hear from folks when out and about, and also know kind of through the school board resources, email or however that I can be reached. So ways to just check in and also just know if you have issues or concerns and bring them forward, and we'll find a way to listen even outside of necessarily the formal channel of public comment and meetings.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that is a good reminder for all of us. I want to acknowledge Chautauqua's February 2nd day of play, where they get extended recess and like lots of time to play. And if I were in the high school, I would work on that. I would talk to whoever was the principal of the high school or McMurray and suggest that they take the little extra play date on 2/2/22. So I just thought, I was like, God, Chautauqua, again, way to bring it home. This is what we need. We need a day of play.
Maybe mention that to ASB.
Yeah, exactly. And also, just thanks everybody who was involved with the strategic plan. We had a great meeting before this meeting to talk about the strategic plan and where it is. And it's such an interesting document, and there's so much in it. There's so much, just so much heart in that document. There's this, and kindness. It's just a, Toby and I have been on this board for 6 years, so it makes me feel like I've been around for a very long time, and I read something like that and I think, God, this is so worth it. This is an amazing district, and I'm so honored to be part of it. So thank you to everybody who worked on that.
We anticipate next meeting in February that the board will take action on that.
Yeah. Okay, finally, Mr. Matt Sullivan.
Thank you. Provided to you are documents supporting our regular monthly financial enrollment report. I will start with enrollment, which is through the first of this month, January. We had an overall increase of 0.4 FTE, but we're hanging tough at 34.28 FTE above budget, which is just great. What I'm providing with you now is, or what I'm including in the report now is kind of notes and minutes, if you will. So we can take a look at the ups and downs, if you will, of enrollment. Thank you, Jody. Chautauqua saw an increase of 3.96 FTE there, and that was due to a new student from Seattle Public Schools, which is great. And then a new family to Vashon. And I say new student from family, but a student that was enrolled came to enroll in Chautauqua. McMurray, we saw no change. They stayed pat at 355.3 FTE. And then the high school saw a loss of 3.73 FTE. There were 2 students with 20 days consecutive absences. They could not count them. And a student went to Explore Academy, which is an online program. And then a student returned to their home district of Seattle Public Schools. And then Links saw an increase of 0.17 FTE, something due to schedule adjustments, which means there were added class hours or classes that they enrolled in. So overall good, we've had a little bit of an increase, and like I said, at 34.28 FTE is excellent, above budget at this point. Any questions on enrollment?
If a student has more than 20 consecutive days, we are
can't-
legally obligated to unenroll them, right? So it's,
Can't count. Yep.
Now, I don't remember last year or the years before, well, probably last, I don't know. Student Link, their numbers really have increased a lot. What, 16
And-
FTE, is that?
Basically, once Dr. Thomas Elliott took over, we've seen them go from 100-ish or so to, they're maxing out around 130 FTE on a regular basis.
Right, but even from like September to January, we've seen a big, it's just,
Correct.
and those are all new to the district students?
No,
or
a lot
are
of
they
them
shifting
are from
the high school?
the high school to Links.
Okay, that's what.
And then briefly on the financial report, we are tracking really well with our estimated, this is of course the finances through December. So we're about 33.3% of the fiscal year, obviously for 12 months, so through the first quarter. And like I said, we are tracking really well with fiscal year in regard to expenditures. They're at 33.4% of 33.3% of the year. So we're, like I said, just doing extremely well with what we budgeted to where we are with expenditures. And then we look at the 5-year average, about 7.9%, and the 10-year average is at 7.9%, so we're right where we should be. On the revenue side, of course, we start to see a little bit of drop in revenue after the October taxes come in. So we're at 30.3% of the year, 33.3% overall in revenue. And that, of course, difference, like I said, is due to we receive our local taxes on October and April, and so we're just living off apportionment from that October to April, if you will. And so you'll see a little bit of drop in revenue until April hits, and then it bumps up quickly. And of course, the October taxes are really usually around 40% collection, and we see about 60% come in April. And that 5-year average about 7.1%, and the 10-year average is tracking right with the same at 7.1%. No blips or anomalies to report, staying pretty pat with what we see with expenditures and revenues as we should.
where are we on the operating reserve as a percent of the budget?
The number is right there on the dashboard,
Yeah.
but I don't have that off the top of my head exactly what percentage overall is.
That's okay. I got it. It'll be nice to see it.
Yeah, that would be a good number to put in there.
That'd be cool, yeah.
I mean, it does fluctuate a little bit month to month, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Totally, yeah.
We see an extremely, this is where myself and Kay Adams, our finance director, get really worried, the February and March, because that's our, quote unquote, our lowest time of year with reserves. Because that 40% in October of local taxes doesn't help really carry us that well until April hits. We get about 60%, like I mentioned earlier. And so we start to see our fund balance really drop. And right today, we're about 800,000. And apportionment was 1.5 million. And of course, the state doesn't give us an even allotment of apportionment throughout each month or throughout the year. And so it becomes really tough this time of year.
Maybe some indicator on the monthly dashboard might be kind of
Yeah.
interesting to observe that.
That's a great idea. I like that. Yeah.
And I think you presented at the last board meeting in terms of the budgeting calendar when you present the expectations for enrollment for the next year.
February 10th, next meeting.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
that was coming up, I wasn't sure. Okay.
And myself and Kay have finished, well, I shouldn't say finished, but we've completed the initial round of those enrollment meetings with our principals and Thomas Elliott, our links director. And we give a couple of weeks before you're able to turn those numbers in because applications, off-island students, et cetera, are still coming in specifically to middle school and then the high school. So there might be a little bit of change, but we have a good number at this point of what we see as enrollment, but that'll be presented at the February 10th meeting.
Thank you.
When's the next advisory, budget advisory meeting? Soon?
I think it's second week of February.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear
The budget advisory committee, when are we meeting again?
Oh.
That's all right, I mean,
Can't believe you asked that.
All the questions.
No.
Okay, is that it?
That's it.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Thank you. And you're only just on the agenda once. That's it. Okay, policy number 6225,
Okay.
in honor of Kay.
If there are no further questions or discussions about policy 6225, I would recommend the board adopts policy 6225.
Okay, are there any discussions about this? Any questions? All right.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt policy number 6225.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Congratulations, 6225. All right.
We would approve that sign electronically.
Woo-hoo! We're charging into the 21st century. Okay, consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda passes. Any new business?
I just wanted to recognize the public, or the donation from Janet McAlpin for the drama program. The agenda,
yeah.
it's really awesome.
Thank you.
What's it? Okay, sorry. Okay. What's the Southwest Kings School Retirees Association? That. Thank you.
Yeah, right.
I mean, thank you to them too for the Chautauqua Library. Thank you. We love it. Okay. Having reached the time and having reached the end of the agenda, this meeting is called to a close. It is adjourned. Look at that.
On the dot. Very.
Happy signatures.
That's how Jody rolls.
Oh my God.
Some of them are very thick. It's not all individual pieces of paper. Some of them are very, very thick pieces of paper.
Right.
Or packets.